Hi, you are watching episode 4 of Honest E Discussions with Melanie and Kimberly. I am Melanie.
And I'm Kimberly. We thought this week maybe we would take a couple of minutes to let you guys know how this all got started. Melanie and I actually went to high school together in Chicago. And so we were talking one day about different things that were in the news. And we said, hey, wait a minute. We both had two different perspectives on the same issue. So we figured if we brought those different perspectives to you and put them on YouTube and shared with you how we're living in the same world with different perspectives, it might be kind of neat to listen to. About those this week, I think we're talking more about an episode we did last week and kind of expounding upon how different it is, because there was so much more we could have talked about and in 30 minutes just didn't. But Melanie, what do you think about that part?
I think that's a great idea. And I also think that if anybody out there, anybody who's watching us, if you have an idea or you want to be part of our discussion or you have a question, email us at honeste, that's honest and then the letter E, discussions@gmail.com, and we might make you part of the show. So yeah, Kimberly, let's keep talking about what we were talking about last week. Before we got on the air, you had sort of a perspective about, you were asking me about how we approached racism with our kids, I think, right?
Right. Like, I know how I did it. You know how you did it, but neither one of us know how the other one did it. So how did you approach the whole concept of there being racism? And let's just put it bluntly. How did you discuss racism amongst children who have quote unquote white privilege?
That is such a great question that I think I'm going to answer it in a way that surprises you. I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever had to. I think that the world did it for my kids. I think that they went to a school that I consider diverse. And by diverse, I mean there were kids from everywhere. Like there were Black kids and Hispanic kids and, Asian kids and tons of kids from Europe who spoke all different languages. So my kids grew up with, I used to call us the regular white people, and I realized now that I shouldn't have done that. And I used to say we were the only regular white people there, meaning we didn't speak another language, we weren't from another country, we were white, and we were just plain, normal, boring, run-of-the-mill white people, except that we were Jewish, so that made us like a little bit, whatever. But I think they probably addressed it with me because I would ask them questions, and this is like kind of very recent, which sort of leads to these conversations you and I are having, is I would make a statement or a comment or ask a question, and my kids would say to me, "Mom, that's so racist." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm not racist. I'm not being racist." And they're like, "You are." And I'm like, "But," and so for them, I don't think I had to, I think they're educating me because I know, and I was discussing this with a friend of mine the other day, I know what I know because of how I was raised and when I was raised, and things were okay then, accepted then, that aren't accepted now. So things that I say, sometimes my kids will just be like, "Mom, you're so racist." And I'm offended by that. But now that we're, a year or two into, past them saying that the first time, and we're into this big, situation going on here in 2020, I'm not offended anymore. I'm more just put in my place, and I say to them like, "Okay, why? And tell me what I'm doing wrong, and explain to me how I need to say that, or what you think that I'm saying that's racist." And it's hard because I sometimes feel like I can't say certain things or I can't ask certain questions to them without them getting the wrong idea. And then when I bring them to you or to another Black friend, they're like, "Mom, you can't ask that question." But I have to ask the question, because if I don't ask it, then I can't be better about understanding. Does that make sense?
Good answer. Yeah, it does. Good answer. Because a lot of, you're welcome. A lot of times, and this is my experience, I went to a basically all white grammar school. You know, there were 2 Black kids in the class until maybe 6th or 7th grade. So I understand why you don't know the things that you say may be racist,
Yeah,
because everybody around you was saying the same thing. So it
right,
was the norm. So I heard all those comments when I was little, but I took it internally a different way because, of course, I was the Black kid you were talking about.
right.
And so my experiences with racism started very young. I started my conversations with my children very young. And I let them know that there's certain things that you can and cannot do. There's certain places you can and cannot go. There are things you can and you cannot say. And they were like, why? It's like, because I said so. You know, we did that until they were about 6 or 7. And then they started questioning me. But why is it like this? It's like, it's always
Right.
been that way. You know, that's the way it's going to be. And to keep yourself safe, you need to know, you know, just like you can't go to Bridgeport. You can't cross 35th Street past, you know, over by Sox Park and walk around freely. It is not in your best interest as a Black child to go over there, even in 2020. I mean, I know, like once you get past the stadium, that's our boundary. We have. I told my kids they had boundary lines. That's your boundary line. You may not cross that line because I can't ensure your safety when you go on the other side of it. So we've had lots of conversations about what you can and can't do, who you must address in a specific way, and who you may not address in a specific way. So we've had plenty of racial conversations about what is and what is not in our country of America.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had to. I mean, I'm sure things came up. I'm sure there were issues and questions. And I remember having conversations similar to that, but more having to do with like the LGBTQ population and like what was right and what was okay and acceptable and how this is like this and that's fine. But I don't feel like I ever really remember having to address um, racism with my kids. And I feel like they just sort of instinctively know. I do remember, and you and I talked about this on, I think it was episode 1 or 2, where I came to them and I said, you know, this friend of mine told me that if you're with your Black friend, don't run, you know, stay with
Oh,
them. And
that's what I wanted to get back to. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
so I mean, I remember addressing that in particular with them, especially with my younger son, who does tend to hang out like at the parks and the basketball parks and stuff like that. And they've come home and told me, you know, about things happening outside, but you know, my
Like
older
what?
son went to um oh gosh, you know, just like, oh, we got to the basketball court and, you know, like they might say, well, there were a bunch of Black guys over there, but they were older, so we didn't want to play. Or you know, they looked at us like, oh, we don't want to play with those white boys, which was, you know, I think their perception, where they didn't feel like they were comfortable. But then one of my younger son's friends is something like a quarter Black on his dad's side or something like that, and he's like, no, I'm fine, I'm good, we can play with these guys. And you know, my son's just kind of like, you know, I don't know, they're kind of looking at us funny, like maybe we should just, you know, go play somewhere else. And you know, and I remember like growing up in the same neighborhood when I was a kid, there were definitely areas that we considered not safe. I mean, I live kind of pretty close to where Cabrini Green used to be. And sort of like you're saying, you can go to this spot and you cannot cross, you know. So it was more like for us, it was, we couldn't cross into the Black area because we would not be safe. But I had friends who lived like right down the street from Cabrini Green, and we knew how far down the street we could go. And then after that, you just couldn't go there. And so we knew that, but I mean, I don't know. I think this neighborhood was different in the 70s. There were some
It was
sketchy
way different in the 70s. Yeah, it was way
like
different in
I
the
don't feel
70s.
like right now when I drive through, you know, what's considered a Black neighborhood, I'm just curious to see what people are doing, but I don't feel unsafe. Whereas as a kid, we would drive through Cabrini Green and my parents would say, roll up your windows and look straight forward. Do not turn your head. You know, it would be just like, you know, just drive and get through, and we'd be like, oh crap, we just drove through, you know, this bad neighborhood. And even I think when the kids were little, I remember pumping gas across from a housing project and thinking, oh my gosh, I hope I'm safe here. And I still pump gas in that same spot, but the housing project is gone.
So now what scared you though? Was it the Black people that scared you? Was it the fact that it was the projects that scared you? What part of it scared you?
Well, I think when I was a kid, I think that it was the notion that we were not welcome and that we might get hurt because we were not welcome. We were white going through the black part of the city, and we were not welcome. So don't make trouble. Don't look like you're doing something. I mean, I don't know if I was scared on my own or just scared because I was being told to be scared. When I was an adult pumping gas in that one place, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if somebody's shooting outside of this, shooting, what if I get shot? I mean, I guess that was, what I'm thinking is like, I'm right outside the projects and I'm just, I don't want to be the victim of a stray bullet kind of thing.
And I'm not gonna put you on blast today. I swear I'm not. You're sparking stuff in me that makes me ask you, because I have a different opinion.
Yeah.
But what made you think about the shootings? Is it the media that's getting you to think about the shootings? Do you know personally about the shootings? Like, what about the shootings? That's
I think
the unwelcome part. I think we both get that on the flip sides. I know I'm not welcome in Bridgeport, so I don't go.
Right. I think it was just sort of maybe a media assumption that if, that these things happen in these neighborhoods and that you needed
all Black people shoot people.
All Black people projects, just not all Black people, but Black people who live in the project.
Black people in the projects. Okay, yeah. So they're all the shooters. Okay.
Project safe, and that shooting goes on, and that there's drugs and there's things and we're not welcome, and they don't know what we're doing there, and maybe it was a bad assumption, maybe it was a wrong assumption, maybe it was a racist assumption.
Maybe you were right. Who knows? But
maybe
the discussion is, why do we think the way that we think, right? So that's awesome. You're able to articulate why you think the way that you do. And that's part of the point of us having these conversations. Honestly, talking about what it is, where the fear comes from, why are we all afraid of each other? A group of white people sitting around and be like, oh, I'm not racist and I'm nobody to be afraid of. And then Black people are sitting around like, I'm not racist. Nobody should be afraid of me, but we're all afraid of each other. So what is that about?
Right. And when my kids were little, we went to, we used to get the free library passes. And one of the places that had a free pass was the DuSable Museum of African history or African American history. And I always thought it was kind of like the Chicago Historical Society or Chicago History Museum, but the Black version, or from the Black view. And I used to take my kids there. We used to go like once a summer, and great museum, really cool stuff. And, we'd be driving through Hyde Park, and I, made a concerted effort, which maybe I shouldn't have had to make the effort, but I made the effort to see the neighborhood as no different from my own. It was a beautiful neighborhood. There were lots of people looking like they were going about their business. And, we would stop and we'd go to Starbucks and whatever. And I'm like, I'm not going to be afraid. I refused at that point to be afraid. I'm like, I don't know if Hyde Park is a place I should be afraid of. I don't know if it is or not.
Hyde Park is like Old Town.
Hyde
Park doesn't count.
Right. But it is. But then I also wondered if I stood out, if I looked like I don't belong there. And I wondered if people looked at my kids and me going, well, what are you doing at the playground here? Or what are you doing in this neighborhood? You don't belong here. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go about my business, do my thing, have a good time, because I love this museum. There was a great park right by the museum. We used to picnic out in the park. I'd take my kids to the playground, and I'm like, I'm just going to let it be, because that's what we need to do. Like, we need to be comfortable here, and whoever lives here needs to be comfortable having us here. And just like when Black people come into my neighborhood, I need to be comfortable with that, and they need to be comfortable to be here. And so that was, that felt kind of important to make it, to normalize the trip to Hyde Park, if that makes sense, without again sounding racist, I guess. This is where my kids would tell me I sound racist, Mom.
Look, it's gonna sound racist, and let me tell you why, and let me tell you why it's actually okay. Look, the only way you can say it, that's how you were raised. So
Right.
you were raised in a way in a time, and when people want to say racism doesn't exist, it's imperative that we say that it does, because the small little things that you could think or that you can say based off the fact, like you said, your grandmother was born in 1900. My great grandmother was born in 1900. My great grandmother's mother was a slave. So we're not that far removed
Right.
from the racism that they're saying everybody needs to get over. Oh, slavery was a long time ago. No, it really wasn't. If
Right.
your grandmother and my great grandmother were the same age, which this year would be 120,
Right.
it's not that long ago, because
Right.
you knew your grandmother. I knew my great grandmother. They spoke to us. They told us stories. They gave us information. They shaped our minds. They shaped our lives. And it's not that far removed, especially
Right.
from our generation. So then we now have the teenagers, and I'd say our age group has anywhere between 8 and 32-year-old children. Okay, ish,
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right.
somewhere in there. I'll
Yeah.
say 35 just to make it a nice round number. But from any 8-year-old to 35-year-old in that demographics, they're the new generation that's too removed away from your grandmother and my great grandmother. So it's
Right.
not something to get over. It's not something to dismiss. It's not something to pass by. But the views are so deeply rooted in both of us. In both
Right.
of us. When I'm hearing you tell your stories, and I'm just like, oh, why didn't you feel comfortable in the black neighborhood? And the same reason I don't feel comfortable in the white neighborhood.
Right.
It's just because of the way we've been raised and the things that we've seen and the things we've been shown. You made it just fine in and out of the neighborhoods you went in. I made it just fine, in and out of the ones that I went in. But some people don't. And that's just the
Right.
reality of life. On our last episode, we were talking, what was the thing you said that made me say, oh, I want to talk about that again? I forgot again.
I don't know.
I don't know. I wish we could rewind. Um,
I don't know. But wait, do you think it's important to try to normalize these experiences, though, to try to, like, if we want to get over the racism, do we need to immerse yourself in the situation and not be afraid of it, right?
well, the fear is what's causing all the problems.
Right.
So this is one thing my son said on the last video that just crushed me. We were talking about talking to the police and the differences, and how the police actually said out of their mouth to your children, you should have run because you're white. You could have just kept running and saved us the paperwork.
Right.
And then my son just puts his head down. He's like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what? Tell me what happened just then?
Yeah.
Because it can be normalized to me too, because I'm thinking the same thing, because unfortunately that's the way it is. But he told me, he said, when I hear that, I think to myself about Trayvon Martin. And so fortunately and unfortunately, my son looks exactly like Trayvon Martin. I mean, except for the nose is a little bit different. But other than that, even as his mother, I'm like, oh my God, you really do look like him. Wow. And he said for him, it was so traumatic about him being killed by someone who was not following what the police even told him to do. The police told him to stand down. He was like, no, I got it. I'm going to go and investigate and take the law into my own hands and do this other stuff. And then eventually shoot a little kid.
Right.
But what my son was telling me was, oh my God, Mom, it was like I saw myself be shot and killed. I watched my own murder. And that just made me go, God.
Yeah.
You looked, figuratively, yeah, you did watch your own murder because you're around the same age. But for you to look so much like each other, you watched your death.
Right.
And then to see someone with the complete audaciousness of Zimmerman to not only get off for killing a child armed with Skittles in Florida, which is a whole nother cesspool of racism as far as I'm concerned. But no offense to Florida, but you know, I've done my history as well. But to see that not only does he get away with it, he has the audacity to sue the child's parents.
He did?
Oh yeah, he's in suing the parents for, I think it was for defamation of character. I could be wrong about what he's suing them for, but it's you've killed their child, and now here you still come and have the audacity to say that they owed you something. No. And that, to me, is the complete definition of white privilege, even though Zimmerman's not even considered a Caucasian man, except in his own mind.
Yeah.
They ran back his lineage and all, but just to think that, that can happen is I think that the issue with race is the inferiority and inferiority complexes that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
So one group becomes inferior and the other group is not, and I think that is where people come up with this irrational fear to keep you from finding out what the truth is, that one's not better than the other, one got better breaks than the other, and that's pretty much it.
Right. And I think that we're kind of learning that too, is that it's not, if we've been doing a lot of reading and watching and discussing over here, and when you know everything that happened, then it's like, oh, okay, this is just a set of really crappy circumstances. And it's not, I've never felt like I was better, and I don't look at anybody and go, I'm better than you are because I'm white, or I'm better than you are because I have a job where I don't have to whatever. It's like I look at everybody and go, you know what, if you've got a job, great. If your job is to do something yucky, great, you're doing it, thank you, I appreciate it. I never look down on anybody because of the job they have or what they're doing. It's like we're all just people, and we're all just, if you get into a conversation with somebody, you're going to find what you have in common, and you're going to find at the core that you probably enjoy each other regardless of what this looks like or what my job is or what money I have. You're going to just find, if you just start talking to somebody, you're going to go, you know what, you're pretty cool, and they're going to go, oh, so are you, and this is fun and whatever. But
hold on, but you have to get past that fear of the racist part on all people's ends to get to the coolness, and that's kind of the issue that's going on right now too. Yeah.
But I think, and like what you were saying is like, it's like, it's not that anyone's better. It's just that, we've, white privilege exists. We've had opportunities that I don't even realize have been opportunities, because it's just, and we need to do a whole nother episode of that. To me, it just is the way it is. Like, I don't know that it's that I have some sort of a privilege. I just know that I have what I have. I do what I do because that's just the way it is. And I don't actually know. I'm starting to understand, but I don't actually know that it's, harder for a Black person to get to do a lot of the things that, that I get to do or that my kids get to do. I don't even know that, and I think a lot of people do have sort of the impression like, oh, maybe the Black people are, lazy, or they're not as smart, or, they don't as well in tests, or they don't try as hard. It's like, it's not that. It's just that the circumstances are, going back to, the slavery time. It's like, they're mind blowing how hard it's been for Black people to try to get up in the world. And it's unfair. It's wrong. And that's just from my perspective, just what I've learned. It makes me sad because, going all the way back, it's like, none of it should have been the way it is.
Well, just for example, the rioting that's happening now, based off of what you just said, Black people being lazy. It's like, wow, 400 years of oppression, show and 250 plus years of complete slavery, working
Mhm.
for free in the heat of the
Right.
day, picking
Right.
sticky cotton and getting your fingers poked and
I
bleeding and
can
calluses and sunburn and, you know, snatching
Mhm.
of the like, that's so not lazy. That's so
So not like
unlazy.
so
That's like, you know, and it's like a 360-degree. It's almost like hearing Trump talk, you know. It's like, not
yeah,
you, but the the
yeah.
the the verbiage,
The
you know. It's like when Trump says something, it's like, hey, that's actually not true. It's 100% not what you just said. And so
right,
when I hear Black people are lazy, my ears start to burn because I get so mad because I
right.
start thinking about what with the high pitched what.
And
It's
I
like lazy.
I'm just saying
No,
that
but no, we're there, and that's the good part.
yeah,
Like lazy, absolutely not. Forced to work, yeah, yeah, yeah. Who could have been lazy at that? And if you wanted to be lazy, you got beaten with a horsewhip or
right,
a cow whip or
right,
whatever the animal that whipped it or branded or whatever. And there's like so many things upon things upon things upon things that just like are so completely outrageous. And even with the fear, you know, oh, you know, there's fear of Black people. It's like, you know, technically Black people should be more afraid of white people
yeah,
than white people should be afraid of, but because
yeah.
historically, look, you have to go historically, Black
Historic,
people were the ones minding their own business when they got abducted and forced on a ship across the world to work for free. It's like, that's pretty scary. It's never get it doesn't not never it doesn't get addressed enough to discuss the fact that people were kidnapped,
right,
abducted from their,
right.
you could just, like, if you were walking down the street going to the store to get something for your kids, and someone from Africa came and snatched you and put you on a boat and took you to Africa and made you work, and nobody ever knew where you were again.
Nope. I
What?
can't. Yeah, that it's unfathomable. So here's
That's
okay.
just the start.
So to go right back to the very beginning, you asked the question in the beginning. How did I address racism first with my kids? I just remembered when you said that probably maybe 5 or so years ago, in the summer, I decided to go to the library and rent every episode of Roots and play it for my kids on the back porch.
Good
We
one.
watched that, and that I think was their first introduction. And I don't know if it was 5 years ago; it might have been longer than that. It was actually probably was, now that I'm thinking about it, probably longer ago than that. And that was their introduction to, and also it was very eye-opening to me because I saw that on TV when I was like 9 years old or whatever. But we all watched it and we all were just like enlightened, horrified, shocked, educated. And I think that was, so that's the answer. And it wasn't intentional. It was just something that I remember from being a kid. And I was like, that was a good series. And I like to introduce my kids to things from my childhood and my past. And they're, you know, so they're very well-versed in the olden days stuff, you know? So, and I rented all those videos and we watched them and we discussed them. And I think from that point on, we all had a much different and better understanding of help me out here.
Real slavery, of real earth slavery, real
Yeah,
earth.
yeah,
Because remember in the 70s when that came out, the FCC was completely different as well. So you could say racist words on TV. I mean,
right,
you know, you could
right.
say words that you can't say now. You could walk around. Well, let's do it this way. The Black women in the movie could walk around topless and it wasn't a big deal because no one cared if the Black woman walked around topless. Now, there was no Caucasians walking around topless in the 70s because it was indecent. But if a Black woman walked around topless, it was like, ah, that's savage, who cares? So there's also, even watching Roots, there's so much racism around the production.
Oh,
Or
okay.
not the production, I take that back, not the production, the airing. Because remember, that came on ABC.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was on primetime television on real TV. There was no cable back then. So it was okay. Nothing was censored. Nothing was bleeped. There was no blurry around the boobs. You know, there was no blurry here or there. So they were just like, yeah, we're going to give it to you raw and you're going to take it like that. And, you know, it still had a slight, even that had a slight slope on it, I should say, a slight slope, but an excellent series, an eye-opening one, the first one of its kind, you know, where you could actually sit and watch and go, what? They did what? And that was on the it was on the good.
And I think
the good vibe.
Description. I think we all just kind of were like, wow, this is really, I mean, and from there, I think launched a lot of discussions among the three of us. So yeah, this has been a great conversation, and I feel like we could probably talk for another hour, as we tend to do when we're not on camera. If you've made it this far, Melanie and Kimberly can be reached at honestediscussions@gmail.com. We will be talking about some of the things that we talked about today. I think we're going to probably have to revisit some of these things in the next couple of episodes.
Absolutely. And it would be nice to get other people's views. So we'd like to have you come on and sit at the table and have conversations with us, because our views might not be your views and our experiences may not be your experiences. So we need to get this going. We need to have, you know, a visitor on a week at least, or at least two, one on each side, just to see, you know, what other people are thinking. We see your hand, honey.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, okay. So for now, everybody.
That's all right.